They thought they were clever. That was their first mistake. They thought your silence was confusion, your calmness was weakness, your patience was permission. And they played into that fantasy like amateurs bluffing at a high-stakes table, unaware the dealer built the casino. You heard every word. You watched the small betrayals stack like cards in a house too proud to recognize the draft creeping beneath it. They didn't know you memorized the tells, how their voice jumped a little when lying, how their eyes scanned for validation, how they weaponized half-truths when full exposure would have burned their little reputations to ash. You kept the receipts, not for vengeance, but for symmetry. Because nothing reveals a man more than watching him perform under the assumption that no one's watching. You let them dance. You let them build. You gave them the spotlight and let them believe they earned it. That's what makes this so devastating now. The collapse isn't coming from anything you did. It's coming from what they did in your assumed absence. And now that the curtains peeled back and the lights feel too hot, they're realizing something terrifying you knew. You always knew. Every fake smile, every joke with double meaning, every move dressed up as strategy but soaked in insecurity. You caught it all. You didn't need to stop it. You didn't even want to. You were studying the organism in its natural habitat. And now the organism can't breathe without wondering how long the camera was rolling. Awareness is dangerous when it wears a grin, when it doesn't flinch, when it allows the game to continue long past the point of exposure just to see how far fools will go in front of an audience that doesn't exist. That's what they did. They postured in empty rooms. They barked at shadows. They performed to ghosts, thinking they were winning some invisible war. And you stood in the center of it all, with no need to react, because reaction is what they were trained to provoke. You broke the training. You watched their programming glitch when you didn't fall into character. You were a mirror they couldn't manipulate, and now they're choking on their own reflections. People often confuse presence with power, but it's the stillness that disarms. They prepared for explosions. You gave them an echo. They braced for confrontation. You offered silence. They're only realizing now that everything they did, all their plotting, all their posturing, was done under the quiet observation of someone who understood their moves before they even made them. There's no cleverness in being read like a children's book. There's only embarrassment. And now that the crowd knows, now that the illusion has slipped and the mask is on the floor, they can't walk into a room without hearing the whisper he knew. Not from you. From the silence you left behind. You never needed to shout. That's what separates you. The moment you realized awareness wasn't a reaction but a weapon, the game changed. While they played for moments, you played for memory. You didn't need to prove them wrong. You needed them to live their wrongness, to become the embodiment of every deceit they once swore you'd never see. Because real exposure doesn't need confrontation. It happens slowly, like a rising sun that blinds the liars who only practice their tricks in the dark. They're squinting now, not because they see you, but because the light you left behind makes it impossible for them to see themselves the same way again. They wanted you small, responsive. You gave them none of it. You gave them poise, control, unshakable awareness. You gave them the discomfort of someone who doesn't argue because he already won. And that unnerved them, because most people expect the aware to shout. You didn't. You let them build a throne out of arrogance, knowing full well it was crafted from matchsticks. Now it's ablaze, and they're coughing on the smoke they lit themselves. Every time they try to tell the story, they flinch, because you never raised your voice. But somehow, your silence became the loudest chapter in the tale. Do you know why it stings? Because their whole identity was built around the assumption that you were clueless, that their duplicity was genius, that you were simply one move behind. But now every eye in the room turns not to them, but to you. Not because you revealed something, but because you revealed nothing, and yet they collapsed anyway. That's real power. When they expose themselves trying to trap you. When their schemes fall apart without you touching them. When the audience begins to see that the only fool in the room was the one who thought they were smarter than silence. And now they don't know how to speak around you. Every sentence feels like a confession. Every glance toward you ends in retreat. Because once someone realizes you've been aware the whole time, their mind fractures. They begin to rewind the past in a panic, wondering what else you noticed, what else you archived. They see your face in places you never stood. That's not paranoia. That's the residue of guilt left by their own performance. The ghost of your awareness now haunts their every move. You don't even have to remind them. Their conscience does the work. Beautifully. Brutally. It's not about revenge. It never was. It was about letting them unravel in a story they thought they were narrating. You could have stopped it, could have cleared the air, but you preferred the long game. You let them enjoy the taste of imagined victory just long enough for the fall to feel eternal. And now the taste is gone, replaced by ash, replaced by the embarrassment of realizing they were never ahead, never in control, never safe, just exposed by the one person they thought wasn't even looking. You let them perform, lie, and posture, not because you were naive, but because you understood something they didn't. People reveal more in their acts than in their truths. You watch them like a scientist watches a lab rat, except the rat thinks it's the researcher. They thought your silence was vacancy, thought your absence was neglect. But you were collecting data. Every flinch, every overshare, every exaggerated reaction, it all went into your mental archive. You knew the second they started crafting their hater that truth had long since left the room. So you sat back, observed, made no corrections, let them assume. That's the greatest form of power, giving someone just enough rope to decorate their own downfall, thinking it's a throne. Their lies weren't even creative. That's the insulting part. Predictable, repetitive, designed for an audience that didn't include you. They told stories about you in rooms you never entered, thinking the echo chamber made them untouchable. But you were listening. Through silence, through absence, through the patterns that liars never realize they repeat. You didn't challenge them. Why would you? A good manipulator wants to be seen as clever. A great one stays invisible. So you gave them a stage and watched them forget the cost of their own spotlight. They built castles of falsehood on sand, and you took notes on every grain. They mistook your restraint for oblivion. That's what people always do when they equate volume with intelligence. They thought they were 3 steps ahead, while you were 10 steps silent. They thought your indifference meant ignorance, but you weren't indifferent. You were patient. You didn't react because you didn't need to. Their lies served you better than any defense could. The more they talked, the deeper they buried themselves in inconsistencies. You let the contradictions pile up like bodies in a trench, each one marked by their own arrogance. And the best part, they felt victorious with every performance, until the silence turned into evidence. You let them posture because you understood ego, not just how to spot it, but how to weaponize it. Most people build their identity on a need to be perceived as right, noble, smart. You let them fill the room with their own projections, while you stood in the shadow, unbothered. They argued against imaginary threats, fought wars with paper dragons. They needed conflict to feel relevant, so you gave them just enough resistance to trigger their performance, and then you let them tire themselves out. That's how real power works. It doesn't dominate. It evaporates your opponent's energy by making them believe they're in control. They spun their lies so often, they began to believe them. That's the problem with unchecked deception. It morphs into delusion. And you knew that. You understood the psychology of repetition. You knew the human mind, when soaked in falsehood long enough, will start hallucinating reality. So while they built delusions to protect their image, you watched the borders of their empire crumble. Slowly, quietly, beautifully, one contradiction at a time. Their memory became unreliable. Their allies began noticing gaps. And you never lifted a finger. The unraveling was internal. You were just the mirror they refused to look into. They wanted attention. You gave them an audience. They wanted control. You gave them enough rope to feel like puppeteers. But all along, you were the hand behind the curtain, managing the tempo of their downfall. See, you don't expose a liar by calling them out. You expose them by letting them talk. And you let them talk for far too long. They performed character assassinations thinking no one would see the blood on their hands. But eventually, their stage collapsed under the weight of their ego. And now the audience is asking questions. Now their credibility is a joke. You let them lie because their lies were weaker than your truth. That's the ultimate flex. You didn't need to refute. You didn't need to defend. You let their stories rot in real time. You didn't need to yell back. You just survived long enough for the rot to be visible to everyone. And by the time the dust cleared, you stood there clean, untouched, undeniable. Not because you fought harder, but because you didn't need to fight at all. Truth ages well. Lies don't. They're embarrassed now, but they'll never admit it. That's part of the punishment. They'll act like nothing happened. They'll try to befriend you again, pretend they were just misinformed. But you'll see it in their eyes. That flicker of recognition, that moment of dread. Because deep down, they know you always knew. And now every word they say feels fake, even to themselves. That's the long-term consequence of unchecked ego meeting unshakable awareness. They don't trust their own story anymore. And here's the cruel twist. They thought they were building a reputation by tearing you down. But you were building something took memory, patience, restraint. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was evidence. It was strategy. It was chess while they played darts in the dark. Now when they speak, people look twice. Now when you speak, people listen. Because you didn't win through destruction. You won through discipline. And discipline terrifies the performative. You could have exposed them the moment the lies left their mouth. You had the facts, the receipts, the history. But that would have been mercy, wouldn't it? A swift end, a clean cut, and you weren't in the mood for charity. Not this time. You'd already played the fool once, already given them chances to stop digging the pit they swore was your grave. No more. So you let it play out. You let them construct the narrative, inflate the illusion, decorate their little facade with just enough arrogance to make the fall theatrical. You let the whispers pile up. Let the fake alliances tighten around their neck like silk scarves that would soon turn into nooses. You knew the truth would land heavier when it wasn't thrown by you, but dropped by their own weight. There's a unique kind of elegance in watching someone's self destruct while believing they're dominating. That's the theater you mastered. You didn't need to rush in with evidence or plead your case or make noise. You just gave them space. Space to perform. Space to twist stories. Space to let their own confidence rot their credibility. And you sat there, the still one. The one who didn't chase vindication. Because you understood something most don't. Exposure hits harder when it's earned through spectacle. When they've dug themselves so deep that silence becomes a mirror, reflecting every misstep back in glorious, undeniable clarity. You weren't after revenge. You were after revelation, and revelation tastes better when everyone is watching. They assumed your silence was weakness. That's their favorite delusion. They confused the absence of retaliation with the absence of awareness, but you weren't passive. You were precise. Timing was your weapon. You knew the moment they started spinning their web that the only way out would be entanglement. So you left them alone with it. You left the lies untouched, like bait hanging just low enough to seem safe. And they bit, again and again, until even their allies began to flinch. Until even the room they thought they owned started whispering when they walked away. Because real exposure doesn't start with a scandal. It starts with doubt. And you let them build that doubt themselves. You could have thrown a grenade. Instead, you gave them rope. And rope is patient. Rope is polite. Rope doesn't scream. It waits. Tension by tension, it learns the shape of its target. And then, when the moment comes, it snaps into place. That's what they felt, in the end. Not a bang, not a fight, just pressure, quiet, inescapable final. Their collapse didn't come from your hands. It came from their own momentum. That's what made it beautiful. You gave them nothing to point at, no outburst, no scandal, no retaliation. Just the haunting realization that they were undone by the very performance they swore would immortalize them. The room watched. Oh, how they watched! The same people who once nodded at their falsehoods, the same ones who entertained the act. They became the audience to a silent tragedy. And you never stood, never interrupted. You sat there, still, composed, watching the same way a clock watches time unravel everything. The room felt the shift before anyone said a word. They noticed the subtle unraveling, the inconsistencies, the fragile tone, the eyes that couldn't maintain contact, the stuttering confidence. People remember that. They remember how you didn't flinch while your opposition drowned in their own echo chamber. That's legacy. That's power. Your restraint wasn't passivity. It was calculation. Most people can't grasp that. They're addicted to immediate reaction, fast justice, ego salvation. But you were sculpting something different. You understood that when someone is spiraling, the last thing you should do is intervene, because interruption grants them an enemy, and enemies give them purpose, victimhood, a banner to wave. You gave them none of that. You let them fall with no one to blame. They didn't just lose. They became the proof of their own fraudulence. That's the kind of defeat that lingers, that haunts, that lives in the eyes of anyone who watched it happen. They'll never admit it, but they know you knew. They remember every time you smiled when they expected outrage, every time you left the room instead of explaining, every time you met their provocation with calm. That's what's burning them now. You didn't just survive the narrative. They're realizing you directed the second act, and the applause at the end. That wasn't for their performance. That was for your patience. Because in a world addicted to noise, you weaponized silence. There's a psychological fracture that occurs when someone realizes they were being observed the entire time. It destabilizes them, breaks the illusion of control. And when they realize you were always 3 steps ahead, the humiliation isn't just personal. It's public. That's why they flinch now. That's why they rewrite history in their head. Because the truth is too devastating. You didn't defeat them. You let them implode. And now, they have to live with the echo of their own collapse, knowing the only reason they were exposed is because you gave them time. You didn't have to lift a finger. That's the masterpiece. All you did was wait. Let the rot rise to the surface. Let the room see it. Let the contradictions stack until they became undeniable. You didn't come back swinging. You came back still, focused, different. And now they can't even stand near you without remembering the version of themselves they buried in your presence. You didn't expose them. You allowed the truth to arrive on its own. That's the kind of revenge no one recovers from. They looked clever, didn't they? Pulling strings, whispering threats, making moves with the confidence of someone who thought they saw the full board. And that's the part you almost admire. The confidence. The sheer audacity to believe they were manipulating you while standing on terrain you constructed. Playing a game you rigged before they even learned the rules. Every tactic they thought they invented. You embedded it. Every maneuver they thought would blindside you. You placed it there like a trap disguised as opportunity. They weren't playing chess. They were acting in your design, following rules you authored, mistaking your silence for blindness while failing to realize. This board was yours before they arrived. They paraded their cleverness with pride. Every smug smirk, every half-baked scheme, every illusion of control. It was all theater for you. You watched their hands move pieces with confidence, completely unaware that you'd already calculated every permutation before they even took their first step. You weren't reacting. You were recording. You weren't fighting back. You were feeding their illusion, letting them believe they were creating chaos, when, in reality, they were only following the paths you paved. They thought they were tricking you with strategy. But what do strategies matter in a room where the architect is already 10 layers beneath the game? They didn't realize that intellect alone doesn't terrify you. Amateurs with ambition often mistake cleverness for power. But you know better. You know that power isn't about being smart. It's about being silent long enough for the smart ones to outsmart themselves. You let them have their little victories. You let them knock over pawns, sacrifice bishops, and even threaten your king. Why not? Their game was theater. Yours was reality. While they plotted theatrics, you plotted outcomes. And the outcome was always the same. They thought they were winning, right up until they learned the board they played on was designed to collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. They were so obsessed with looking strategic that they forgot to question why everything felt so easy. Every trap they set for you already had a trapdoor beneath it. Every alliance they built had a backdoor only you knew existed. You didn't need to confront them, you needed to watch them. And so you did, quietly, meticulously. With a kind of patience only dangerous people possess, you let their plan expand. You let them think bigger. Because you knew the larger their ego grew, the more space it left for collapse. And when it all fell, they didn't know what hurt more, the failure itself, or the realization that you predicted it all. This is where most people falter. They think being steps ahead means rushing to the finish line. But you knew that building the board meant controlling the tempo. You didn't need speed. You needed suspense. You let the pressure rise. Let the silence grow louder. Let their minds eat themselves alive with speculation. You became the phantom in their strategy, the variable they couldn't calculate. And every time they tried to understand your next move, they failed. Because you weren't on the board anymore. You were in the walls, in the wiring, in the timing. You were the rhythm, the entire system they claimed to control. They underestimated what it means to face someone who engineered the environment. You didn't just understand the game. You shaped it around their personality. You knew their habits, their vanity, their tells. And you embedded that psychology into the structure itself. That's the highest level of warfare, not reacting to your enemy, but anticipating their instincts and letting their nature become the weapon. You didn't just beat them. You let them destroy themselves on autopilot. And now, they aren't just embarrassed. They're disoriented because they can't figure out when it all started slipping. They don't know how long you've known. They just know they were never in control. There's something surgical about that kind of dominance. You didn't scream. You didn't gloat. You let the realization land like a slow-motion car crash. You waited until they were so sure of their superiority that questioning it would hurt their pride more than any confrontation. That's why they avoided your eyes when the tide turned. That's why they stopped talking. They weren't defeated by power. They were defeated by clarity, by the quiet weight of understanding that you didn't fight to win. You built the win and let them decorate it with their ego until it collapsed under their own ceremony. They look stupid now, but it's not stupidity that hurts them. It's hindsight, the slow rewind of every smug moment, every fake laugh, every whispered conspiracy. All of it now tainted by the knowledge that you were always watching, that you allowed it, that you invited it, and that they danced for your amusement. There's a cruelty in that, sure. But it's not sadistic. It's educational. Some people only learn through collapse. You gave them that lesson, not out of malice, out of inevitability. Because arrogance playing chess against the architect of consequence will always end the same way, with checkmate delivered by silence. And now, when people mention your name in their presence, they flinch, not because you hurt them, but because your restraint haunts them, because they know you could destroy them sooner. You could have broken the illusion with one word, one move, one exposure. But you didn't. You let them unravel in public. You let the crowd see who was who. And that's what stings the most. How obvious it looks now. They thought they were playing the game. But you were the game, and they were just a piece you let believe it was a player.